All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I mean, he can't help himself.
Kamala and Joe tried to take credit for $35 insulin. You know that. You know who did that? I did that. I did the insulin.
I did the insulin. I did it. I did the insulin. You did not do the insulin. To do the insulin, you needed legislation. To do the insulin, you needed a statute. To do the insulin, you needed a law, and you needed the law to change. You needed the law to change. You did not change the law. The law had to change in order for Medicare, which represents 66 million people, in order for Medicare to have the authority to negotiate with Big Pharma. Remember when Bush did this thing and he put a big brick wall between Medicare and Big Pharma to protect Big Pharma's gouging, and said, oh no, Medicare cannot negotiate with Big Pharma. They literally put that into a piece of legislation banning Medicare from negotiating with Big Pharma, right? And then here comes Joe Biden. Here he comes. Everybody hates him because, he was too young when he was, a young man. Now he's too old because, he's the oldest president ever. But Joe Biden's elderliness actually made him determined to lower prescription drug prices for Medicare, people who earned Medicare benefits by working and paying into it their entire lives. And now they're being gouged inside Medicare in Medicare Part D, and Part D is not allowed to negotiate with Big Pharma, right? So they needed to pass a piece of legislation. You remember when it was called Build Back Better? Remember that? And they were making fun of it, Build Back Better, Build Back. And you had, your Joe Manchins and your Kirsten Cinemas being very contrarian and saying, no, it's too big. I don't want to do it. And she was all about protecting Big Pharma. And they had to split the bill. And they split the bill into the infrastructure package, remember that, and the recovery package. Well, the Inflation Reduction Act actually included the reversal in the law that was required so that Medicare could then negotiate with Big Pharma for the price that Medicare would pay for pharmaceuticals in Medicare Part D. So today, in Maryland, Kamala and Joe Biden did a dual appearance. It was wonderful. It was uplifting. It was important. And it had a lot of policy in there. And they explained it in a way that even I could understand it.
We finally addressed the long-standing issue that for years was one of the biggest challenges on this subject, which was that Medicare was prohibited by law from negotiating lower drug prices. And those costs then got passed on to our seniors, but not anymore. 2 years ago, we gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for the first time in history. And here is why that matters. It is nearly impossible for a patient to negotiate lower prices by themselves. Just think about that. Somebody who needs the medication, who may be suffering from a serious illness, that they would by themselves be able to negotiate against a big drug company to lower their prices is virtually impossible. It's one person against a huge corporation. But Medicare represents more than 65 million people. And so Medicare has collective bargaining power. And now Medicare can use that power to go toe-to-toe with Big Pharma and negotiate lower drug prices. Thank you, Joe.
And that did happen. And it's 2 years. It's been 2 years. And so now we're ready to do not just insulin, but 10 more drugs. You remember how this had to be phased in because Big Pharma was at the other end of the table there, and they had all these objections to just, going ahead and lowering prices. So they sat there and they thought, So which drugs are about to have, competition in the marketplace, like generic, that they have outlived their patents? Now, when they're brand new drugs, when they're patented drugs and there's no competition for these drugs, that is when they gouge you. Supply and demand being what it is, right? When the supply is only coming from one company for, let's say, an arthritis medication like an Enbrel, right? But Enbrel's been on the market so long that it's now coming out of protection, right? And generics can now be made using the exact, chemistry, the exact, equation. And so they sat there and they thought about all these drugs that are just coming into the marketplace with generics. And they're like, okay, we made $8 billion a year off of Xarelto, or we made $9 billion a year off of Eliquis, or we made $10 billion a year off of Jardiance, right? And how did they do it? They did it by overcharging you, right? This is where the profit comes. So, okay, well, they'll be generics. So we'll start, saying we can negotiate on the price of these, because it's like, I don't know, Lunesta, it was very expensive. I love that pill. It's my favorite of all the pills. You take it, hour later, you're sleeping. Yay. But it used to be like really expensive. Now there's a generic for it, and it's like, not even $1. So this is what's happening with all these drugs. So they have negotiated the 10 new drugs that will come down in price. They will be capped for people in Medicare. And they're working on getting insulin capped for all Americans, for every American, not just Medicare now. And insulin was one of the most grotesque. See, and the reason why Donald Trump, look, he's a liar is what it is. The man just can't stop. He has no idea what his administration did on insulin. He has no idea what his administration did on anything. Nothing. He doesn't care about policy. He doesn't understand it. He has no acumen for it. Remember when he was getting the intelligence briefings, the presidential daily briefing? He had to have it like drawn for him. Do you know what I mean? He needed drawings. He can't. He just can't absorb complex information. He can't absorb things with moving parts. The only thing that arouses him, the only thing that excites him is money, dollars. That's it. That's all. Making things better for you is not anything he's interested in. Like, how could he profit off of it? Yeah, it would be, but not. So he lied. He just stood there and lied yesterday. Obviously, it was a lie because you had to have changed the law in order. So what did he do on insulin? Just so we're real clear. Okay. He had a CMS secretary. Her name was Seema Verma. She left in disgrace, okay? She left under investigation. She was trying to save her bacon, and she said to him, we should really reduce the cost of insulin because it doesn't cost anything to make, and they're charging like, $1,000 a month for a drug that costs them like $10 to make. You can sell that. Why don't you do that? It was a voluntary thing where certain health plans said, okay, we'll offer that. Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to randyrhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.